Okay, welcome everybody to Adult Forum. I'm Mary Devins. I am the co-chair with Gary Comstock, back there, of the Adult Forum. And today we're very excited to welcome Becky Crosby. But before I introduce her, let me just give a pitch for our next Adult Forum, which is in 2 weeks. Mark Zimmer, who is a professor of chemistry at Connecticut College and a brilliant speaker, the title of his talk is Hot Mess, Cool Science. So he's going to talk about the environment from a chemist's point of view. And another thing we would like to say, we're a new committee now of Adult Forum, and we're really excited to be working together. So if any of you have any ideas of topics or speakers or anything you would like to see, please get in touch with us. You can ask Ann in the office our names and stuff, because we welcome suggestions or people you know or anything, so you're all welcome. We're also having a meeting on May 31st just to begin to plan for next year. So if anyone would like to join that meeting, feel free once again to ask Ann where that is. So let me introduce Becky. Well, as they say, Reverend Becky Crosby needs no introduction. She has been part of our congregation in one form or another for much of her adult life, singing in the choir, being sponsored for ordination during her divinity school studies, and finally moving into ordained ministry. Becky received a BA from Connecticut College and a Yale MA from the Divinity School. At Connecticut College and at Yale, she participated in an interdisciplinary approach with art history and religious studies. For 8 years, Becky was our associate minister. She was engaged in many aspects of the church ministry, from running the children's and youth ministries to leading stewardship efforts, from preaching and pastoral care to her work on behalf of the vulnerable in Haiti and Palestine and beyond. Becky, together with her husband Ted, founded a scholarship and educational organization, the Crosby Fund for Haitian Education, 22 years ago. Together with their Haitian staff, the Crosby Fund provides scholarships for 553 students and offered educational opportunities through their education center. Welcome, Becky.
Today I would like to highlight some of the church's paintings and sculptures and tell you about the artists and how each of them were connected to the Old Lyme community over the last 120 years. We begin by looking at the art colony that began in 1899 at the Florence Griswold's boarding house. Many of you know the story of Miss Florence, but I will briefly share it for those of you who do not, to set the stage for the art community in this town. After Florence's father died in 1882, her mother, she, and her sisters needed to find a way to earn a living. Together they founded the Griswold Home School. Florence was 32 years old at the time, and they offered music, drawing, and painting for young women. The school closed in 1892 after the death of her mother and sister. Florence found herself alone and needing money to keep the house and the estate. She opened a boarding house in 1899. Henry Ward Ranger, an established painter, stayed with his family at the house and was enthralled. He imagined establishing an American Barbizon school that would reproduce his experience of the Barbizon school in the forest of Fontainebleau, France, near the village of Barbizon. The Barbizon school, which was about 1830 to 1870s, was a pivotal French art movement that marked a shift in painting. They rejected the idealized academic scenes, and they favored a direct observation, practicing plein air painting, which most of you know means painting directly outdoors. Creating a real life images, untamed beauty of the forest with natural light, and the moodiness of the weather. The school marks the bridge to Impressionism, a movement that began in France in the 1860s. Impressionism gives the artist freedom to paint what they feel about a certain scene at a particular moment in time. The movement uses visible brushstrokes, vibrant colors, resulting in paintings that come to life. Key artists of the French movement were Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Camille Pissarro, and the list goes on. Henry Ward Ranger spread the word about Miss Florence's boarding house and the beauty of Old Lyme and Lyme with other artists, and many in the course of 5 years came, establishing a community that became the home of the American Impressionist movement. Frank Dumont, soon after, who was a professor at the Art Student League in New York, started a summer school in Old Lyme in plein air painting at Miss Florence's. Okay, so here we have Frank Dumont. These are all artists sitting at Miss Florence's house. That's Clark Voorhees and Harry Hoffman, who you're going to hear from, and then William Chadwick. I'm not sure who these two are. And this is a painting by Matilda Brown. We don't own it, but I really liked the image of the home because it shows the Impressionism, what that movement's all about. Instead of everything being clear cut and painted precisely, you feel the movement and the feelings of the house, the warmth, the sunlight, and you can see the vivid brushstrokes in the painting. This is an image of Frank Dumont's art school that was located at the Florence Griswold's home, but I don't think this is there. It might be, but I think they went to other locations as well. Wilhau Foote studied at the Institute of Chicago and studied in Paris at the Académie Julienne. He visited Miss Florence's art colony in 1901, and he assisted Frank Dumont at the Lyme Summer School of Art. And then he moved permanently to this town in 1905 and had a house built on Sill Lane. And so we have in the Hoag room of our church, this is an image that Wilhau Foote painted of Clark Voorhees' house. And this is a house that if any of you go north on 156, just past the Old Lyme Marina, it's actually at the landing there, Pilgrim's Landing, where people launch their kayaks. This house, that's where this house is located. It doesn't have the green shutters anymore. It just is white, and it's sort of at an angle. But this house was painted by many artists. I've seen another version of this house at the Florence Griswold Museum. And this was Clark Voorhees' house. So here again, you see the style where you can feel the sun coming in on the porch, and you can sense the quick movement of the paint. Here in Impressionism, things are not static, they're moving. They're not like you see in some paintings where everything is perfect, everything's in its place, everything is drawn out, everything just feels, it's beautiful, but it feels like a photograph that's caught in perfect time. And here, things are moving. You don't sense the staticness of it. I don't know how Ted's phone is attached here, but there's someone at our front door. Okay. Harry Hoffman also was a student of Frank Dumont's, but at the Art Student League. And you'll notice with many of these artists, the connection that's bringing them to Old Lyme is being a student of the Art Student League or teaching at the Art Student League. And the word is getting out about Miss Florence's house and just the beauty of Lyme and Old Lyme. He also studied at Yale University with John Ferguson Weir. John Ferguson Weir is Julian Alden Weir's half-brother. And some of you are familiar with his work. In 1902, he visited the artist colony and stayed with Miss Florence. And then in 1905, similar to Wilhau Foote, he moved to Old Lyme, and he actually became very close to Miss Florence and helped her with her finances for the rest of her life. And we see here, it's an unidentified location, but it could very well be on the shoreline here. And he writes that, "I paint as things seem to me. I want to record my impression and not be bound to a style." Because in those days, you were taught how to paint landscape paintings, how to paint the scene in front of you. Step 1, step 2, this is what you do. Rather than stand in front of something and paint the impression of it, or how you feel about it, to get the motion into it. So when we look at this, we can feel the lapping of and hear the lapping of the water against the rocks. You can feel the sunlight. You can feel there's a sense of movement, and like he's really captured that moment in a way that has feeling and movement to it. I wanted at this point just to bring up the Cos Cob art colony, because many of these artists also had a relationship with Cos Cob. Cos Cob colony was a gathering of Impressionist painters near Greenwich, at the Holly boarding house, and that all began in 1892. So 7 years before Miss Florence's. And at the Cos Cob colony, there was John Twatman, Child Hassam, Julian Alden Weir, Ernest Lawson, and Theodore Robinson. And they all summered there, they painted together, and they had a camaraderie. But Child Hassam, Willard Metcalf, and William Merritt Chase were teachers at the Art Student League in New York, and they also were associated and taught at the Old Lyme Art Colony as well. If you're interested in their work, or the Cos Cob community's work, if you go to the Bruce Museum in Greenwich, it's a fabulous museum, and then you get to see other Impressionist painters of that period of time. I bring that up because some of the painters that painted some of the paintings that we have also studied with John Twatman, William Merritt Chase, and Child Hassam. So that's why I bring up that other sort of sister community of sharing. So William Chadwick is one of them. He was born in England. His family moved to Massachusetts when he was 5. And he enrolled in the Art Student League in New York and studied under Twatman and William Merritt Chase. In 1902, he visited the Florence Art Colony due to fellow pupils at the Art Student League. He was influenced by the work of Metcalf and returned every summer to work with him in Old Lyme. He moved to Old Lyme in 1915, and he lived on Johnny Cake Hill. I don't know which house, but I'd like to find out. And here we have, this is the one I wanted. We have his winter scene in Old Lyme. These paintings are all very small, and the ones that I've shown you so far are all in the Harriet Hoag room. If you don't know where that is, you just will go out of this door, go straight down that hallway to that room that looks like a living room or a dining room. And there are, the paintings are there. If no one is there, or if there's a meeting in there, the door will be closed. If the door is open, you're welcome to go in there, turn on the lights, and look at these paintings. And that's where, so far, these paintings are located in that room. So here you see a winter scene painted by William Chadwick. It's just called Winter in Old Lyme. And you can see in this painting how he's captured the wind. See the wind blowing the trees? You can sense the depth of the snow. You feel cold looking at the cold blue that he has chosen. And I don't know where this is. He lived on Johnny Cake Hill. I don't know if it's in that area. But his image of winter in Old Lyme reminds me of the one that we just went through. Several years ago, I don't know how many years ago, but I'm sure Nancy or Dale would know, the Florence Griswold moved the William Chadwick studio on their site. And so that is the Chadwick studio. And then this is just a little image that I took I didn't take, but I got off the internet of the inside of that studio. So if any of you have not been to the Florence Griswold Museum, you really should go. Especially now that the weather's nice, there's a walking path, and they have this exhibition there, and so many of the artists, they have an exhibition right now where they've taken paintings that have been in storage for a while, like their recent paintings, I think, that are out for display now. So it's really worth a trip to go to the Florence Griswold Museum and then to the Bruce Museum. Charles Ebert studied at the Art Student League of Cincinnati, but he followed by studying at the Académie Julienne in Paris, similar to Wilhelm Foote. In fact, they were there, their dates are about the same time. He moved in 1900 to Greenwich and studied under John Twatman, who was familiar with the art colony in Old Lyme, because Twatman was at COSCOB. He joined the artist community in 1909, but he spent his summers on Monhegan Island. He died and is buried at Duck River Cemetery, as some of the other artists are too. And I wonder, it would be fun to see where they're buried and visit their graves. He painted this beautiful church that I think all of you recognize. This one is right as you step into the entrance there, before you go into the fellowship hall. It's our beautiful painting of our church. And I'm pretty sure this is the 5th meeting house, because he came to Old Lyme in 1909, where the 4th meeting house burned in 1907. So here you have a lovely picture of our church in fall, and he's captured the same, again, the movement, the feeling of the sun, the changing of the seasons. It's lovely. Next, we'll move to Carlton Wiggins. He studied at the National Academy of Design in New York under George Inness, and he also studied in Paris. George Inness, in his early years, was associated with the Hudson River School, but later visited the Barbizon School in Paris. And he frequented the Old Lyme Art Colony with his son, Guy Carlton Wiggins. Many of you would recognize Guy Carlton Wiggins' paintings. They're of New York City scapes in the winter, or sometimes it's with a parade and all the flags are there. You would recognize it if you saw them. And his other son, Grafton Wiggins, lived here in town. He was elected in the National Academy of Design and was a member of the Salmagundi Club in New York from 1883 to 1932, which is a very prestigious club. He is widely known for his pastoral scenes with sheep and cattle. The Florence Griswold Museum has a lovely one of his with cattle. Just lovely. And again, you have the same idea, the same scenes of painting. You can just feel the thickness of the sheep's wool. You can sense the mood. Notice with all of these, just the mood of the weather. You can get a sense of maybe the temperature and what's going on, or what it's, I don't know, for me, I can actually smell it. It's just, I love it. I love it. This is a fun print that we have in the vestibule. It's sort of, if you stand facing, it's off to the left. This was an illustration for Ladies' Home Journal. He painted this, Arthur Keller painted it from a photograph of the church. And I love the way everyone is dressed for church. Now this church is the fourth meeting house. And I would know it even if I didn't know, if someone didn't tell me. You know how I know? The steeple is shorter than the one we have now, by quite a bit. But this painting or illustration is important because it was done in November of 1906. And in July 3rd, 1907, our beloved church burned to the ground, totally to the ground, and everything in it, it was gone. So there was a public meeting held by Reverend Edward Chapman, and his granddaughter is sitting among us right here, Lucia.
Great-granddaughter.
Great-granddaughter, okay, all right. And that's quite an honor to have you here. He gathered the public together to get ideas of how to go forward, should we rebuild, where do we go from here? And Frank Dumont, one of the artists from the Old Lyme community, was present at that time to represent the artist community who were all bereaved at the news of the fire. Our church had been for them an iconic place to paint, to gather, I don't know how many of them were members here who came in the summer. I don't know that connection. And the other thing I don't know, which I thought I would find in the files, I wanted to know, how did we get those paintings? Did the artists give us those paintings that we have? Did their family give us the paintings? Someone gave us the painting and it's not in the file. I like to think, I talked to Betsy Webster, who is one of our church historians, and she believes that the artists gave the works to us. So I like to think that too. So at that meeting, it was unanimously agreed upon that they needed to rebuild the church. And on a later time, the building committee decided that it should be an exact replica of the fourth meeting house that was so beloved by all. And so here's a photograph that we have right in the hallway. It's by that historical case across from the bathrooms. But it's a lovely photograph, and you can get a feeling for the building of the fifth meeting house. Now, the fifth meeting house was going to cost a lot more money than what the fourth meeting house cost. And the artists wanted to participate in helping to pay for this building. So they had a sale of their paintings on the front yard of the Phoebe Griffin Noyes Library that had been built in 1898. So it wasn't that old at the time. And the artists had also had many summer sales there because they didn't really have a public place to sell their art. And so they raised $6,500, which was a lot of money back then, towards the $50,000 to build the church. And some of the artists even gave a little bit more themselves. So the artists had been using the library, as I said, since 1902 for their summer exhibitions, but they needed a permanent place to sell their work. In 1914, Miss Florence gave a piece of land to the artist to build a permanent building. And so, does everyone know where the Lime Art Association is? Yeah. The artists sold their work to pay for the building, and in 1921, so 7 years later after they were given the land, that Lime Art Association opened, and it cost $15,000. So here's a gathering of, I just love the image, of tea on the lawn of the Lime Art Gallery. And here's another image, and here you can actually see Miss Florence and her artists all gathered. Like here's Chadwick, here's Hoffman, and you can see them gathered around, and I believe these were two generous donors. Gregory Smith studied at the Art Institute of Chicago, and he was encouraged by Wilhau Foote to come to the Old Lyme art community. He studied under Haslam and Metcalf during the summer months, permanently moving here in 1916. He was the president of the Lyme Art Association for 20 years. And there's another image that you probably see all the time in the vestibule outside the fellowship hall. This is his painting, Skating on Tooker Pond. Tooker Pond is off of, I don't know the name of the road, but if you go down Library Lane and you take a left and you go down that road, you can see the pond there, and you can see the church in the distance. And here he's captured, again, the chill of the day, but he's also made his snow look slippery. I look at that and I go, wow, I would fall. Even in the back, it's slippery. And so I wonder if that just helps you imagine how slippery the ice would be. It's interesting because Greg Smith, if you're interested in his work, has quite a few paintings at the Old Lyme Town Hall. And his daughter-in-law, Anne Ely Smith, was Anne Ely Weir. She was Julian Alden Weir's granddaughter. Her mother lived in the yellow house across the street from the Lyme Academy, and she was Julian Alden Weir's daughter, Caroline, who you see in some of his paintings. And I worked for her, not the mother, well, just once, doing some weeding for her. She was about 100 years old then. But for Anne Ely Smith, I used to help her do all sorts of things when I was still in high school after school. This is just another painting, we don't own it, but of Gregory Smith. I liked it, and I like what it says, that it was in the Lyme Art Association's 39th annual summer exhibition, currently at Old Lyme, so you can see that it was in a paper. But it's a nice image, again, of snow. Okay, moving along, we have William Granville Smith, not related, I don't believe. He also studied at the Art Student League in New York under Willard Metcalf, and at the Paris at the Académie Julian, like Ebert and Foote, and extensively toured in Europe following the greatly influenced by Claude Monet. He never moved here, but was here. He frequented both the Cos Cob colony and the Old Lyme colony. And he's a member of the National Academy of Design, like Carlton Wiggins. We have two paintings of his, both unidentified, both small, and I think you can just capture the feeling of it, the weather. This one's brighter. His trees here sort of remind me of Pizarro, if you're familiar with Pizarro's trees. He does these wispy kinds of trees. Karl Vermeer was born in Munich, immigrated to Chicago, studied at the Institute of Chicago, like Greg Smith, and also at the Art Student League in New York. You can see that Art Student League in New York is a major theme with all of these and how they hear about the Old Lyme community. He visited the Old Lyme community but never moved here. I bring this painting to your attention as a stark contrast to Impressionism. Here we have a very realistic painting. You can count every single detail of the church. You can see the stones. You can see everything. So here is much more, you can see it's just a different style. I looked at some of his other landscape paintings online, and they're really beautiful, painstakingly painted to be exactly what he sees in front of him. Roger Dennis was born in Norwich and died in New London. He studied at the Art Student League in Hartford, but he was a devoted member of the Lyme Art Association and studied conservation and ran that department at the Lyme and Allen for 33 years. He's worked closely with the old Lyme artists. He's about 30 years their junior. But he was at that age where he knew them as older artists, and some people think he was a bridge to a more modern time. And that is his image of our church that is right at the top of the stairs if you were going to the office. We're going to move to sculpture now. Adlai Hardin was born in Minnesota and pursued a career in advertising, but in his free time, he sculpted in his studio. He concentrated always on religious art. He liked working in wood and was commissioned to carve panels and reliefs for churches and public buildings. He has a beautiful sculpture in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. And here, we have quite a few of his works of art. This one you see in the vestibule if you were going up to the office, or when you leave the church and you're heading to fellowship, you'll see it sitting on the desk. That was given as an image of the Annunciation given to the church by his son at his father's death. And then you see these in the fellowship hall. Here we have, they remain as plaster casts. So when a sculptor is creating a piece of art, he does it in plaster because it's malleable. Then it can be fired, and it ends up like, hardened plaster. At that point, you can pour a liquid. What do they call that liquid? Nancy would know.
The wax?
Yeah, it's a wax that is poured over that to create a form that then you could pour the bronze into and then remove that, and then you get a finished piece of art. These are still in the plaster cast mode. And so we had them mounted on wood so you could better see them against the wall, but also for fear that they could be nicked, they could be dropped, if they would break. They're very fragile at this stage. But they were given to us also by the Son. And we have the healing of the blind man Bartimaeus, and then another Annunciation scene, and then the journey to Egypt. And here, you can see them where they are right now. I took the pictures of them because they're really beautiful. These are all carved, and they were given to us by Adlai Hardin himself in memory of his wife. And they are the nativity scene. I should point to them instead of pointing there. The nativity scene is there. The feeding of the 5,000 is there. This is St. Paul preaching to the Athenians. And then we have Noah's Ark. So these are lovely gifts, and we can thank Adlai for those. Adelaide is my bridge to the Lyme Academy of Fine Arts. Adelaide was very good friends with his sculpting friends, Elizabeth Gordon Chandler and Lottie de Guerin. And through their association with the National Sculpture Society in New York, Elizabeth Gordon Chandler, you can see her right here, is the founder of the Lyme Academy of Fine Arts in 1976. This is their 50th anniversary. And here in this picture, you see Elizabeth and Wayne Southwick, who is chairman of the board of the Lyme Academy and was a sculptor, when they bought the John Sill house, which is just this house, right here. That's what they originally built. This was just a field. And then they built just 3 studios in the back. The sculpting studio stayed underneath the Lyme Art Association, which was where they were from 1976 till they moved to the new sculpture studios at the Sill House in I think sometime in the late, this was 84 that they bought the house, maybe 2 years later in 86. And since then, they've really expanded. Wayne Southwick was the chief of orthopedic surgery at Yale, trained at Hopkins, a surgeon in the Korean War, and he was a wonderful friend to this church. He was the reason I went to Haiti for the first time. Because as an orthopedic team, he would go to Haiti and they would, the Yale orthopedic team would operate on Haitians around the clock, 24/7. Shift on, shift off, shift on, shift on. The students, the patients would come from all over, sleep overnight on the ground for days before they could be operated on. He also studied with Bruno Lucchese in Italy, and he studied sculpture with Elizabeth and drawing under Dean Keller. And you all will recognize this. It's in the meeting house. And he has down here the scripture to go with what he had in mind. They who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint, from Isaiah. And let us run with the perseverance, the race that is before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, from Hebrews. It's called the marathoner. I like to call her the athlete for Christ. This was given to the church by Wayne's children at the time of his death. Wayne has many public works at Yale New Haven Hospital, at the Hopkins School in New Haven, and hospice in Connecticut in Branford. And then we have Stever Aubrey, who also was a member of the church and studied sculpting under Elizabeth and Lottie. He was in advertising for 43 years, but many of these artists in their retirement moved here and wanted to study with Lottie and Elizabeth at the academy. And he has this beautiful sculpture that you see in the library on that table. And I love this, the feeling of this, and the way that she is, her hands in humility are bowed down and offering her hands open for peace. I just think it's a lovely piece of sculpture. And this one and a couple more, we're almost finished, a couple more that I'm going to show you, were given at a time when we had just built the parish house, this whole building. And David Good called for artists. It was empty. We didn't have paintings or anything to hang on the walls. And David Good called for artists in this community to see if they would donate a piece of art. And that's when Stever Aubrey donated that piece of art, because it also coincided with David's 20th anniversary here at the church. Peggy Harris was a good member of this church. She lives in Arizona now. Same thing, she was a stewardess, but then she decided to stop that and study with Lotzie and Elizabeth. And she did that relief that you see. It's outside the partnership room. And this commemorates, and it's interesting that we have this because it commemorates the Koinonia Farm in Clarence, Jordan, where we've got people right now. I think that's pretty cool. Now it says in that tiny print that you can't possibly read, in 1998, FCCOL, in partnership with Habitat for Humanity, built a home on Music Vale Road in Salem, Connecticut, on land donated by Rachel Robinson. This effort was dedicated to the memory of Rachel's husband, Jackie Robinson, the great baseball player that broke the color barrier in 1947, and to Clarence Jordan, who founded Koinonia Farm in 1942 as a racially integrated spiritual community as a demonstration plot of God's kingdom. And it was at, as I said in the service this morning, at the Koinonia Farm where Habitat for Humanity was born. And that is down here. And so here we see Jackie Robinson with a baseball bat and Clarence Jordan. We must be people together, partners under God. And so she put that correlation together because the church had just been down at the Koinonia Farm. And then, and we have Nancy here, and Nancy painted these two paintings. There's a third one too, that commemorates a Habitat build in 2001. And I can't remember, I know the one that Peggy did was on Music Vale. Where, do you remember, Nancy, where this house was located?
I think it's somewhere in East Lyme.
Yeah.
It was Simmons, the Simmons stuff.
Oh, the Simmons land. On Patagonia. Okay, I couldn't for the life of me remember. And so Nancy commemorates that Habitat build where there's three paintings there that sort of tell the story of that build. Now I'm going to embarrass Nancy. Nancy, I stole that off of your Facebook page. I was trying to find, and I thought it looked really good, and I'm hope that you're okay with that. But Nancy has a BA from George Washington University, 1973 to 1977. She studied in Florence with Narina Simi Studio. Is I pronouncing it right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And she has an MFA from the University of Hartford. She's a former professor of drawing and painting and chairman of painting at the painting department at the Lyme Academy, and currently she's a professor of painting at the University of New Haven. Nancy and Peggy is still alive, but Nancy's about the only artist in my talk that is still alive, and so I hope I did that right. Now, Nancy also is sort of our church's portrait painter, and we've asked her to I don't know how many of you remember Amy Henry, but Amy Henry was a fixture in this church for years. She's taught Sunday school, she was a deacon, she did everything. And she was so beloved, and when she died, we really wanted to remember her. And here Nancy has put different parts of her engagement with the church, the hymn, she sang in the choir, and this represents her being an usher, a deacon, and all the children gathered around, children of different races, and I don't know, it was a lovely, lovely image of Amy. And then you all know Paul Verrain. Paul Verrain is whom we have a partnership with in South Africa. And then our last picture is Rutherford. Rutherford Sheffield was another person like Amy Henry who was a longtime member of this church. He was every Christmas pageant. Rutherford, that's why this is here, held his lamp. He was the innkeeper. He would come out this door, and he was the innkeeper, not letting Mary and Joseph in. He was the church clerk for years, and also was a deacon and an usher. And so you see these paintings when you walk into the fellowship hall. And then Paul Verlaine is out in the vestibule.
I think that hymn number was his favorite hymn.
Oh, yeah, Nancy would remember that, because we gave her a list of things she needed to include. I'm going to end here, but I hope this has helped place the artwork of our church in the context of a larger story, that it isn't just sort of random, that there are stories behind this art, and there's so much more here. There's a lot of art that have to do with our partnerships and art that have been given to us, but I was trying to come up with a way of taking some of the art in this church and pulling it all together into one big whole. So thank you for coming.